I booked this hotel room specifically for this window ledge because can't you just imagine waking up, journaling, doing a little bit of reading, enjoying your coffee while you look out to Boston? Hi, welcome back to Feel Good Lab, the podcast where we explore the intersection between personal growth and career success, and then all the good stuff that happens in between. I'm your host, Angel, and I'm in a different environment today because I'm actually in my hotel room in Boston filming this, so this feels like a bit of a special episode. This trip actually started out as a brand trip, so I got to work with one of my dream brands in tech, I guess. I've had a lot of history with that brand, so now being able to work with them in some capacity, yeah, it's just amazing. So originally they only needed me for one full day of filming, meaning I would have flown in on one day and then the next day would have been a full day of filming and then I would have flown home the day after that. But I ended up extending my trip by 2 days, well, technically 3 days, so 2 full days and then 1 day to fly home because I haven't been on a solo trip for a while. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity just to explore Boston because I've never been. If you can hear sirens, it's inevitable because it's one of those cities. But yeah, I haven't been on a solo trip for a while. I've never been to Boston. I've heard only good things. So I extended my trip by a little bit so that I could have some time to just explore the city and also to be with my own thoughts and to be away from some of the responsibilities and daily stressors that come with being at home. I love being at home, don't get me wrong. I have a whole vlog series called Homebody Diaries, but there's something about traveling by yourself and removing yourself from your regular environment that opens your mind up to new thoughts, new ideas, new inspirations, especially when you're in a new city. And it's something that I kind of told myself that I would do once a year, but did I do it last year? I don't know if I went on a solo trip last year. I did do Austin earlier this year, which was really nice. So having the opportunity to do it again in Boston, a dream. Before we dive into today's topic, which I think is actually so suitable for where I am right now, I wanted to give you my feel-good moment of the week. And of course, it had to be in Boston. So I was inside of Beacon Hill Books and Cafe. And one thing that is kind of tough about being a content creator while you're traveling solo is that you obviously have to film and shoot all of your content yourself. So I have my tripod with me. I bring my vlogging camera with me and all of that. But especially when you're in a new city, at least for me personally, it still gets pretty nerve-wracking to set up your tripod, set up your camera, stand in front of it with a remote. I'm also visiting areas that are highly visited, like it's Beacon Hill, it's Back Bay, it's North End. So I still definitely have a lot of anxiety about pulling out a tripod and doing that. Plus, I just don't want to get in anybody's way. Anyways, I was inside of Beacon Hill Books and Cafe, sort of just browsing around, trying to see if there is an opportunity also to set up my phone somewhere where I wouldn't be getting other people in the shot and just film myself so that I could include it in the vlog for you. And as I was walking around the bookstore, I saw these two women who it seemed like one of them was just visiting and the other one was her friend who lived in Boston who was showing her around because she was like, oh, we should go here after because I think you'll really like this. Oh, maybe you should pick up a souvenir from here because it's a common place people get souvenirs. Anyways, it was just such a sweet moment and day for them. And both of them were so happy and they were helping each other take photos. So I kind of just snuck in and was like, hey, I'm Angel. I'm actually solo traveling right now. Would you ladies mind doing me a huge favor and just quickly snapping a photo for me so that I can remember this place? And they were so encouraging and so nice and just really sweet about it. You know, they agreed instantly. They were like, where do you want it? This corner looks really good. Oh, we just took a photo here and the lighting here is really good. How do you want it? It was really, really nice. And I don't know. I guess when I solo travel, it can be kind of different from the way other people solo travel. I think oftentimes people will solo travel and stay in hostels or specifically go to sort of community-based events so that they can meet people and make new friends. But when I solo travel, my purpose is to be by myself and to be on my own time, just be in my own world and head and just, yeah, be with myself. So I'm actually really not used to like introducing myself to people and sort of, yeah, just talking with people when I'm on my solo trip. Obviously, I make small talk with people that I come across at cafes or whatever, but it's rarely ever me that's being like, hey, I'm Angel and I'm starting a conversation. I'm very much so shy, honestly. So yeah, it was a really sweet interaction, and it kind of just reminded me that, hey, it's actually not that scary introducing yourself to people, especially if you think that you guys have similarities. Like, we obviously both enjoy books. We're both women who love traveling. I don't know. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is it was a really nice reminder for myself that although I had a purpose for this trip of being by myself and spending that alone time, having these really genuine and authentic and organic human interactions can also be really energizing. I forget that sometimes because I am such an independent and oftentimes introverted person. But what I've been feeling this year has been different than how I've been feeling for probably like the last decade, where I have had a lot of social anxiety, especially going to like PR events and meeting people that way. I have gone on 3 brand trips this year, literally taking myself out of my comfort zone, flying somewhere else with other people, complete strangers, and spending several days with them. It would have sounded like a nightmare to me previously, but I don't know. I didn't have that feeling this year. Going on any of these brand trips, I have always been excited. I never really felt anxious or nervous. I've also built some amazing new connections and just met the coolest people. I have just started to see social interactions very differently, and I'm honestly not even sure what has changed, but social interactions are now energizing me more than ever, and it is a really nice feeling. So today's topic was actually a recommendation that I collected from my Instagram story questionnaire that I did before I launched the podcast. I'll probably do them intermittently, so make sure you follow Feel Good Lab Pod as well as Speak of the Angel, because yeah, it's just nice being able to get ideas from you. You're obviously the listener. I obviously want to create the content that you actually want to listen to and talk about the topics that you think are important, not just the topics that are resonating with me or that I'm feeling at the time. So thank you to everybody who responds and engages with my posts and answers the questionnaires, because then it feels like we're actually having a conversation and you're participating in the making of this podcast. You truly are. The topic is about what personal peace means to different people and how to find it. I first want to start off by saying I do not have the answer. This is not what this episode is about. I'm not here to tell you exactly how you're going to find personal peace, but I will share some of the things that I've learned about the healing journey and finding peace, and then also share some of my experiences of how I have not found peace, because it's really truly not a destination. Healing is not a destination. Like, exploring your trauma is not a destination. It's all about the journey and what you learn about yourself and how you improve along the way. So I'll share my journey, or at least bits of it that I think matter. Not matter, that seems weird. Just bits of it that apply to what I'm talking about. And yeah, I've read a lot of self-help books, and did a lot of research about this topic while I was in a period of my life where I was really going through it. So I want to be able to share some of the stuff that I learned. I think that this is a really important topic and one that's going to resonate with a lot of people because I think everyone sooner or later enters a stage in their life where they just crave peace. And oftentimes that goes against every ounce of our being because the truth is humans crave familiarity. We are built to crave familiarity. And if familiarity in our lives looks like trauma, looks like emotional turmoil, then that unfortunately is what we're attracted to. However, once you start, developing yourself, working on yourself, growing, figuring out who you want to be, you start to have a different idea of what you think peace is. And you start to almost subconsciously understand that although this is what I want, that emotional turmoil, that trauma bond, that it isn't what you need. Let me know if this sounds familiar. You end up developing cognitive dissonance because it's just such a difference, right? The feeling that we have always wanted, always chased after subconsciously versus now feeling like, wait a second, something feels off. Every time I do this, I feel this, but that is not how I want to feel. I think another shared experience that a lot of us have is that we are oftentimes looking for peace in the wrong place. It seems like a lot of us, myself included, will look for peace in the things that we can add to our lives to make it more peaceful. But what I've learned is also that sometimes peace can be found in subtracting things from your life. And I think it's easier to get caught up with adding things to your life because that is what we associate with growth, right? It's the new role, more money, a better apartment. It doesn't even really need to be superficial like that. But I mean, even when you think of the word growth, you're often thinking about, okay, what can I add to myself to be better? And I think the thought of subtracting from yourself and subtracting from your life is often overlooked. I started therapy thinking that I was going to learn all of these new tools and new methods and new frameworks for me to base my thoughts and opinions on and also to work on myself and to be able to handle situations better. But so much of therapy is actually spent unlearning some of those familiar patterns in our lives. So I guess one of the themes of this episode that I want to challenge you to think about is what are the things that you can remove from your life that will bring you closer to peace? What is stopping you from having a more peaceful life? When I think about finding peace and working on yourself and what that looks like, the one book that comes to mind automatically is How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LePera. This book was actually recommended to me by one of my exes. He was somebody who really went after self-growth. I think me and him met at a point in our lives where we were both so lost and so toxic. But I also think that's why we ended up with such a strong bond and why we still occasionally connect here and there, which I know can be a controversial topic. Maybe we'll talk about that in another episode. But I think because we were in such a desperate stage in our lives where we were seeking change, like we were needing change so bad, that we bonded over the fact that we are both so desperately wanting to work on ourselves and so desperately wanting to figure out what was wrong so that we can no longer have to feel, or we no longer had to feel what we were feeling at the time. So big thanks to him for introducing that book to me. He'll probably never listen to this episode, but that's fine. Thank you. I would say there's a few books that really changed the way I thought about myself and changed the course of my life pretty drastically, and this book was definitely one of them. So the way that the book is laid out is it takes you through a thought process where first you are brought aware of your trauma. And I think the common misconception about trauma is that not everyone has trauma, but the truth is, everyone probably has trauma. Not even probably. I think everyone has some form of trauma. I know the word itself seems really scary, and I know it's easy to compare yourself with other people. Like if you know somebody who's gone through something way more intense and dark than you feel like, oh, well, I don't have trauma. She has trauma or he has trauma. Like that's trauma. And if that's trauma, then that means I don't have trauma, but that's just not how it works. And this is something that she addresses in the book, how most of the times people aren't going to be able to point to the stages or the periods of their lives that were actually damaging to them. But it doesn't mean that trauma wasn't present and trauma wasn't created. Even if you think back to childhood, as a child who is experiencing the world in a new way, you have no idea what impression the world, your environment, the people around you has left on you. Like you don't really have the ability to recall some of those memories. And you really have no idea how your child brain processes these memories, because one child could see their parents fighting and process that as a way of figuring things out. Another child could look at their parents fighting and process that as hatred for each other or disdain or spite. Like, you don't know, right? And you're not going to know until you've gone back and really dived deep into your own brain to think about and revisit those scenarios and actually figure out what they mean to you and how they affect you as the person that you are today. And the thing about trauma is that when it's left unaddressed, it's actually given the power to drive our lives and to shift and guide our lives however it wants. There's this quote from the book that says, "Trauma creates the fundamental belief that we must betray who we are in order to survive." And man, did that hit when I read it. And this can actually be explained scientifically as well. So certain experiences and patterns will actually cause our mind and body to become reliant on those strong physical and physiological responses that we feel from the release of neurotransmitters associated with those experiences. AKA, we will have these traumatic or life-altering experiences, and because it causes such a release of strong emotions in our brain, we see that and it becomes like a drug addiction. Like we literally get emotionally addicted to that feeling. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how humans crave familiarity. So if our bodies are used to being activated or stressed or sad, then those are the feelings that we're going to continue to crave as adults, unfortunately. And the problem is when a belief or feeling is repeatedly validated, so when we are always put in a situation when we're sad or when we are always stressed out or anxious, our body turns that into a core belief of who we are and how our lives should be, which means that it actually becomes ingrained in our identity. And I have the perfect example for this from my life, actually, which is that I identify as a very anxious person. It doesn't show up in the same way. I mean, anxiety isn't going to show up in the same way for everybody. For me, I am relatively high performing. I am pretty good at just going about my day to day. I've been told, pretty good at hiding it. But I think the reason for that is because anxiety is kind of my natural state. I actually didn't realize or wasn't aware that I had anxiety until probably university. But now looking back at my childhood, it's so clear why I have that anxiety, because honestly, I lived through a lot of my childhood with anxiety and stress always present. And that comes from not getting the validation that I needed from my parents and always being afraid that I would upset them, that I would do something wrong, and then being afraid of the consequences from that. This isn't my personal sob story because I think it is just a cultural thing. Asian parents, well, I can't speak for all Asian parents, but Chinese parents, mostly from that era, teach their kids through fear. And so imagine being a child who is constantly scared of the responses that they would get from all of the adults. Like, how do you grow up to not have that fear embedded in your heart and to have anxiety literally being with you all the time? I want to insert a screenshot of my data from my Oura ring and something that my therapist actually pointed out to me. So she also has an Oura ring. I have an Oura ring. When we were talking about my levels of stress and anxiety, she was like, what is your Oura ring telling you? How many hours of stress are you experiencing in a day? And so we both compare our stress levels in the Oura data, and she looks at mine and she's like, whoa, you have a ton of stress peaks. Like, my chart is crazy. It looks wild. But when you read the stats or when you read the description underneath, it's like, you had a normal day. This was not a stressful day. But then you'll look at hers and her normal day, the line is a lot more chill and cohesive. It doesn't have a ton of ups and downs and stress peaks, and that's her normal. And so that was actually really interesting because what we learned about the Oura data is that the baseline of their data is actually based on you. I'm sure there are comparisons with other people's data, but they're not, like for the stress one specifically, they're not comparing it to someone else's baseline. Your baseline is your baseline. And my baseline, what my body thinks is a normal day, what this tool thinks is a normal day, is somebody else's ultra stressful day. And I had no idea. Most days I'm like, I'm having a great day. This is a wonderful day. Like, I am at peace. I am relaxed. I didn't have anything that stressed me out today. My Oura ring told me I had a normal day. And then you look at the chart and it is just all over the place. So do you see how things that you would have never expected to alter the fabric of your being so much actually makes the biggest difference? I'm like, everyone grew up in my childhood. All the kids I knew, all of my family friends grew up the way that I did in similar environments. So this is normal. But then I became an adult, and now stressful days and anxious days is my normal. That is now my core belief and who I am. And I want to quickly insert that when I say that is who I am, it doesn't mean that that is who I'm going to be forever, because that is what this video is about. Finding your peace. That's what the book is about. How to do the work to start, I hate using the word fixing, but to start working on yourself so that you can live the life and be the person that you want to be, that is the most fulfilling to you. So, okay, there are a ton of really amazing nuggets from the book, but I do implore you just to read the book. Obviously, I'm never going to be able to paraphrase it and give you enough detail, because the thing I really loved about this book was that it didn't feel like any part of the book was redundant. What I liked about this book is it moved quick. It gave you what you needed to do. It did give a few examples, but more so really what it's asking you to do is to do the work. So anyways, read the book. I think it's going to be really helpful. If any of this is resonating with you, I think the book will make a big difference in your life, but I'll share some things that really, really resonated to me and stood out to me. First and foremost, and it's what the book starts with, but it's that you have to be committed to doing the work. You have to be committed to your own healing. Whether or not you want to use those terms or not, I know we're not trying to get all woo-woo, and that makes people uncomfortable sometimes. So it can be your adventure, your journey, your path, a project, however you want to word it. You just have to be committed to doing that work and working on that project and making the steps necessary to continue forward. Okay. Another reason why doing the work is so important, besides just wanting to work on ourselves and be better human beings, but also it can help us build stronger and easier connections as well. Another quote from the book that I absolutely loved on this topic is, "Few of us have any real connection to who we really are, yet we want others to see through all of our layers of self-betrayal and into our core selves." How can you connect with someone when you don't know who you are and you can only show that person the version of you that is right now? It's like that super cheesy quote of, you can't love other people if you don't love yourself. But I mean, how true is that? How can you expect someone to vibe with you and connect with you on that level or on any level when there are so many different layers of you that are in the way from them actually connecting to the you that needs that connection, like that core version of you? I feel like I'm therapying myself right now because maybe me doing the work is what now has made it easier for me to have social interactions. Epiphany, maybe? Did I have a live epiphany on the podcast? Anywho, whenever you learn about trauma or personal development or finding peace or working on yourself, I think oftentimes the topic of conversation will go back to your inner child or your child traumas, or like the traumas you experienced as a child. I think that's a very popular topic in this world right now. And it does make a lot of sense. Sometimes I feel like this can be misconstrued to blaming others, like shifting the blame away from you or shifting the responsibility away from you onto external factors in our lives. And I know that your parents, like that nurture aspect, your parents, yes, they're external factors, but they're such a critical and important part of your identity. But I think the misunderstanding here is when you're exploring your childhood traumas and the things from your childhood that has affected you growing up, it's not about pushing responsibility. It's just about awareness and being able to identify it and not pushing blame. It's about figuring out why these things have happened or why I am the way that I am so that I can understand myself better and actually know how to deal with those issues or work on what I need to work on. And to add to that understanding, Dr. Nicole LePera actually gives you 7 inner child archetypes in this book to help you start that thought process of figuring out what happened to you as a kid or what affected you as a kid. Those 7 inner child archetypes are the caretaker, which comes from codependent dynamics. The caretaker really gains a sense of self and self-worth through neglecting their own needs and caring for others. Then there is the overachiever. The overachiever fundamentally believes that the only way to receive love is through achievement. So that probably comes from parents who had very high expectations from the child and would really verbally or physically or visually show love when that child has done what they wanted growing up. Then on the flip side, there is the underachiever. The underachiever wants to keep themselves small, unseen, beneath their potential due to a fear of criticism or shame about failure. So I think oftentimes those two can stem from similar situations, and it really is about how you as a person react to the lack of love when you are not doing well or when you are underperforming in your parents' or guardians' eyes. Then there is the rescuer or protector. The protector ferociously attempts to rescue those around them in an attempt to heal from their own vulnerability, especially in childhood. So I can relate to this a lot. I don't know if this is my specific archetype, but when I see my friends going through anything that has caused me trauma or that I've experienced that just broke me, every inch of my body like I enter fight or flight mode because I'm now reliving that experience through someone I love and I want to protect them so bad. But you can't. That's what I've learned. You can't. You just have to let everyone experience and go through things on their own. So the only way that the protector feels like they receive love is to help others by focusing on their wants and needs and helping them solve their problems. Then we have the life of the party. These people are always happy and cheerful. They're comedic. They never show pain or weakness or vulnerability. And the only times or the only ways that they feel okay and loved is to make sure that everyone else around them is happy. The sixth archetype is the yes person. The yes person drops everything and will neglect their needs and what they have going on in their life in service of others. They feel like the only way that they can receive love is to be both good and selfless. Lastly, we have the hero worshiper. The hero worshiper needs to have a person or guru to follow, and the only way that they feel like they can receive love is to reject their own needs and desires and view others as a model of how to live. Which one of those archetypes really spoke to you? Honestly, I can name a couple that I feel like resonated with me, and maybe it's not just one that will feel familiar and hit a nerve in your heart. Actually, let's get vulnerable for a little bit. If you want to get vulnerable with me, comment and let me know which ones resonated with you. But for me, the yes person, for sure, I feel like I have an innate need to just help other people. And I oftentimes, maybe not so much anymore, thankfully, but I oftentimes will not be able to say no to especially people I'm close with. And I think that probably stems from being the elder daughter in an immigrant family and always being the one that my parents went to when they needed help with anything that had to do with like the entire Western culture. The rescuer and protector, as I mentioned earlier, definitely speaks to me. And honestly, a little bit of the hero worshiper as well. One trait that I've found when looking at people that I date is I will often just be blinded and only see the good in the people I date. And it almost feels like there needs to be this thing about them that I look up to or respect so much, or in this case, worship. And when that image is shattered, I start to lose feelings. At least that was sort of the pattern that I always used to see, like especially in my early 20s. It was like I would put the person that I am crushing on or I'm dating on a pedestal, and then obviously, nobody is going to be able to live up to the expectations that you've created for them blindly in your head. And so when that person ultimately and inevitably fall flat from that pedestal and expectation that I've placed on them, suddenly I'm like, oh, well, you're not really who I thought you were, or I'm just less attracted to them, or I feel like they're not who I want. It was ridiculous. It was so crazy for me to have those expectations, and maybe that's even something that I'm still working on. But yeah, yes person, hero worshiper, and rescuer protector spoke to me so much. Speaks to me so much. Okay, I don't want this episode to turn into me just trauma dumping on you. So let's talk about things that we can do to do the work and to ultimately find peace in who we are, how we live, what we want our realities to be. So just like how the book starts with, you have to commit to yourself to take this path and do the work, and you have to take accountability for that work. At this point, you also need to tell yourself that it's your responsibility now to teach yourself to meet your own needs, to be your own parent, to learn to identify those patterns that need changing and the things that needs to be removed. Like, it's on you. It's on nobody else but you. It's not on your therapist. It's not on your parents, not on your best friends, not on your boyfriend or girlfriend. It's your job. This is your responsibility if you want to make a change. If you have needs that need to be met that aren't met, if you have trauma that needs to be explored, it's your job to do all of that. And one of the first steps that you can start doing that is by identifying the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs that you have and looking at how you've been conditioned to attempt to get those needs met. Are the things that I have in my life right now that I feel like are meeting my needs really healthy? Is what I seek for in a relationship healthy? Is what I seek for in friendships healthy? Is the way that I communicate with my parents healthy? Is the way that I love myself healthy? I think awareness will always be the first step to making any sort of change in your life. So starting to get that awareness and understanding of how you currently do things and whether or not that's how you want to continue doing things is a great place to start. And when you start to figure out what is serving you and what is not serving you in your life, learn to start saying no and learn to set boundaries. How are you going to obtain any type of peace in your life when you have no boundaries? When you're unable to block out the things that actually are stopping you from feeling any type of peace? This one is hard. Learning to set boundaries has been one of the most challenging tasks that I have attempted in my 20s because it's going to feel extremely uncomfortable. If you're somebody who always says yes to your friends, saying that first no to your friends will make you feel awful. It'll make you feel like a bad person, or it'll make you feel like a bad friend. But if you have good friends, they will understand. And that's one thing I will say I love and appreciate from my friends so much. Like, I could not be more thankful for the understanding that my friends give me when I tell them, no, I don't want to go to this gathering or this party or even a birthday because I'm feeling really socially anxious today, or I'm not feeling my best self and I just know that I'm going to be a bummer at this party, or I can't today. I emotionally cannot do that today. And for them not to look at me and be like, oh, you're going to miss another thing of ours. You're going to miss another hangout. You're going to miss a birthday. What is wrong with you? Like, for them to look at me and just accept that this is who I am. These are my needs and those are my boundaries, and still love me. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. So start to figure out what are those boundaries that you need to set, and maybe start kind of in your outer circles. So people who are a little bit more removed from you, start setting boundaries at work. Start setting boundaries in your day-to-day. If somebody is catcalling you, like, tell them to go away, or be like, excuse me, sir, please step away. Start setting those boundaries with strangers or acquaintances first, because that's going to feel a lot easier. And then when you're comfortable, start figuring out the boundaries that you need to set with your friends, your family. Oh, those are hard. But ultimately, those boundaries and those no's are what's going to help you connect with yourself and be able to fulfill your own needs and find your version of peace. So the book sort of ends by her saying, like, this is what the work is all about. The work is actually about choice and us having the ability to choose how we treat our bodies, how we show up in relationships, the relationships that we're willing and should take on, to be able to choose our friends, how we communicate with them, how we communicate with our family, the relationships that we have with our families, and the ability to choose how we literally craft our realities and our futures. There are always going to be things that are out of our control. That is just life, unfortunately. But we do have power over the way that we experience the world and the way that we go about our lives. So even by starting to figure out who you are, what you need, and what peace looks like to you, and then start setting the correct, like building the correct structures to be able to support that, and setting those boundaries and putting up doors, maybe not walls, but doors that you have the choice to open or not. That's what I think will ultimately bring you peace. Man, I'm really starting to feel like these podcast episodes are turning into full-on therapy, like, for myself. So give me your feedback. Let me know if we're getting too deep, if this is just getting too vulnerable. I genuinely feel like I just went to therapy. Like, I have that same feeling of what it feels like after you vulnerability dump on people, like trauma dump on people. I mean, it feels good though. It feels good to talk about it. It feels good to work through things as I'm talking to you about it. And one of my favorite feelings in the world is being able to share what I learn in hopes that it helps someone else who are either in a similar situation as me, or even sometimes it applies to people who are in completely different situations as me. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. It's getting sunnier and sunnier outside in Boston, and I think it's time I actually leave my hotel room and enjoy the city. I wanted to get this episode filmed for you though, because important topic. I made a promise I'm going to upload once a week, and I will. And also, I think it's kind of fun filming in a new environment. So let me know if you liked this little impromptu on-the-go version of the podcast, or if you'd rather just me be in my regular space and have it be very cohesive. If you're watching or listening to this podcast somewhere where you can leave a comment, please do. Even if you don't want to get vulnerable with me and share what your inner child archetype is, just comment and let me know how your day is going. I genuinely do want to see like who's listening to this podcast, who's enjoying this podcast, but also, of course, your engagement helps the podcast grow as well. Like every action you take, whether it's a like, whether it's a share, whether it's a comment, whether it's just a listen, helps me. So thank you so much for doing any of that, or even just listening and just being here. I don't want to get cheesy, but I'm just really thankful that I have this platform and that we can have these conversations, because they're really important to me, and I hope that they resonate with you as well. But that is it. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you're tuning in from, and I will catch you next week. Bye.